that like a big thing? People always want to touch my hair? That's a thing?
Definitely.
Weird. Yeah, cool.
So where you want to touch?
You want to touch my hair? I'm losing some, but I'll touch some hair.
Educate me, and then when you say you can touch my hair, people know what it is they're actually touching. But if you're just doing it and you don't know the concept behind it, you don't know the origin, you don't know how it happens or how hard it is to take it, then you've not been educated. You just had your whatever satisfied.
With the fascination and reach and touch my hair, and something else goes down. So like I said, we're trying to save some lives out here. You might not want to just go up to any random black woman and touch their hair just because other people want you to touch theirs.
I have happy hair, and I call it happy hair because it is it's unmolested. I don't try to make it, I don't fight it. I have a relationship with my hair, not always. I've grown to this, and I've learned, particularly with Black American women, most of us are taught or start off with the understanding that something is wrong with our hair, whether it's our grandmothers wrestling us to the ground to tame it into ponytails. There's pain and crying and suffering, and most people who do our hair, their first lesson is to change it. So it's kind of like Adam and Eve, it's like Eve, you start off wrong. So for a lot of Black American women, our hair historically has started off as wrong. And anyone who touches it, their first job is to change it, change the texture, change its nature. And so when you start that way, the journey to finding happiness, it can be long.
Well, see, this is the challenge. Black people, so many Black people don't even know their own hair grade. I've had friends in their 30s look at me and be like, oh my gosh, guess what? I cut my hair and guess what it does? Because they were so young, myself included, when their hairs were perm, they didn't know what their hair looked like. So when they actually got exposed to it, we actually had to learn our hair in our 20s and 30s. We had to figure out how to tend to our hair.
I was so used to the kind of, media and what Black women's hair should look like. It should be straight, you know what I mean? It's just, so I wasn't used to that. It took a lot of soul searching to get used to the texture that I had and be okay with it.
Because the society doesn't cater to kinky hair. It doesn't cater to me being able to walk around with my own hair grade. It tells me that it's not beautiful. It tells me that I'm not as beautiful as a woman of another race. It tells me to wear weave. It tells me to wear braids. And it tells me when I do those things, I immediately become more socially acceptable.
Now that people are starting to embrace it, everyone's so curious and they're so fascinated and they're like, wow, I'm wearing hair natural. That's so different.
I was actually at a Hale and Hardy, which is similar to like a deli.
There was a moment most recently when I had locks, and I was in line at a coffee shop.
And I was waiting for my boss to finish paying, and a man who was staring at me the entire time in line, and I just thought he was just a relatively nice person.
And I heard two women discussing if they could touch my hair. They didn't ask me directly, but I overheard them. They were standing directly behind me.
And he made a beeline for me as I was just waiting by the door. And I guess he felt like we had some type of connection because I went to go say hi to him and his hand just immediately just went straight for my scalp.
And they were, saying, ooh, what do you think if we touched her hair? Do you think she would mind if we touched her hair? What if I just put my hands in her hair?
That was definitely eye-opening.
And, you know, I was appalled. And so I slightly turned around to indicate that I could hear their conversation and also to let them know, no, do not touch my hair.
I was definitely taken aback.
It felt invasive. It felt as if I was this, you know, curiosity.
I'd never had somebody just, well, at that time in my life, I'd never had somebody just come up to me and just throw their hand in my head, and not to mention like get all the way to my root. It kind of made me feel a little bit vulnerable.
It made me feel, you know, like, you know, something about me was so totally odd and strange, you know, that it was, you know, okay for them, one, to just come up and touch it, or okay, you know, or two, just to have this conversation behind my back about it.
At the same time, it made me laugh. It's ballsy, so hats off to him.
Curious, lack of information, entitlement, no home training.
I think he was curious, and again, I feel that he thought he was comfortable enough to actually, you know, ask me and really go for the gusto. So I just really think it comes down to curiosity.
I'm not interested in having a conversation where I make people feel better about my hair, or if I'm my hair texture feels like. Have an intimate relationship with a black person. You have a black friend. Have an intimate relationship with a black person. You ask them. Yeah, that we can either control or we can help.
Well, we can't control by saying no. You cannot. Like we finally have the voice. We're not Sarah, who did not have that.
One of the biggest criticisms of the You Can Touch My Hair exhibit was it reminded people of a woman named Sarah Sarkey Bartman. Sarah Bartman was a South African woman who in the early 1800s was encouraged to go to Europe only to literally be put on display. The Europeans of that time hadn't seen anyone that looked like her because she was physically different. So she was a curiosity, something strange. Fast forward to today, and yet again we have people curious about a physical difference. Yes, curiosity is the first step to enlightenment, but we have to question the nature of our curiosity. Is it innocent curiosity? And even if it is, was it that same type of curiosity that led to Sarah being put on display? We called You Can Touch My Hair an exhibit for a reason. We could easily have called it a discussion or just an event. We could have held up signs that said, "Ask me about my hair," but we called it You Can Touch My Hair for a reason. It wasn't supposed to make anyone comfortable. But we wanted to draw the parallel between a very literal display and the not so literal displays that happen in everyday life. There's nothing wrong with being curious, but we do have to be aware of how we let our curiosities play out and how we're treating people as a result of them.
I want to see if it's soft. Yeah, it is. It's definitely soft. Yeah, but I have time.
And your hair.
Thank you, girls.
What
are we trying to say here? Is it educational, or is it just like exploitation?
Well, you see, when she's after speaking to Tiana, there is this thing with people feeling the need to want to touch your hair if you have your hair out, and I'm like, it's very true. You always have people touching your hair, putting it out there and saying here, because this is something that everybody, this is what everybody wants. This is what everybody asks me all the time as I walk down the street and I touch your hair consistently. I had a t-shirt that said they can't touch my hair. I think this, what they're doing, is very educational, but I do feel when people just coming and touching your hair, that is exploitation. I don't think that people should find it okay just to come up and, you know, touch your hair.
Well, it depends how you say it. And it's kind of on, easy person, and high dials. You have to understand that people have to live in that. They're very sensitive about the hair because they're very interested in the hair. I'm interested myself. Like, I did see the Chris Rock's documentary he did on good hair, and you know, not having grown up with a lot of black friends, or you know, we didn't get into that. But I have a lot of hair issues myself, being, you know, kind of curly hair girl who grew up in the era of super straight hair, and I was always trying to straighten my hair and stuff like that. So I think, you know, I sort of can identify a little bit with sort of the evolution of, you know, now people being a lot freer to do their natural hair and have all kinds.
Thank you. So what did you think of the hair textures that you touched?
I thought they were great.
Any questions that you got answered? That you had about black hair?
So much questions as to actually, you know, getting a chance to touch it, because, you know, I guess everybody has their own kind of perception of, is it going to be really stiff? Is it going to be rough? Is it going to be oily? Is it going to be, you know, so, you know, it's great to actually touch somebody's real hair and see what it actually feels like. So.
It's a matter of educating, and I personally don't see what education comes from someone touching. I think there doesn't need to be any touching. I mean, you know, black women or women of color are generally genetically have bigger backsides. Do you need to touch my butt to know why I am genetically predisposed to having a larger backside? No, you don't. Or you can just walk around and accept that people are different. There's a lot of curiosity that surrounds black hair because it's not in mainstream media. There's not a lot of conversation about it other than amongst blacks. So I feel like this was just an opportunity for people of different races and even black people who want to learn how to style their hair that are just going naturally, don't really know, to kind of come and ask those questions. So it's just a platform. So you can decide. It's not like however it grows, that's how it's going to be. You can make it bigger if you want.
Exactly. And even now, if I wanted my locks to be bigger, I could combine them and they'll walk together.
And you dye it too?
I do, I dye it.
May I touch your hair? Thank you. Really?
Actually, people of color mostly. I was here on Thursday as well.
And you got as well. Black people?
Yeah. Which was very interesting to me, and I think that people think we're like tricking them or something. I don't know.
I think mainly black women participated in You Can Touch My Hair because mainly black women are persecuted because of their hair. Right? You know, like, whose little girl is getting sent home from school because of their hair? Not white girls. Who's not getting jobs? Or who's getting fired? Or who's being told, you know, afros are a no-no? Who's being told dreads are dreadful? Who's being told your hair is political? Black girls.
I've actually had a woman say that to me. When I first graduated from college, she looked at my hair, she said, "You look creative."
Creative, right?
And at the time, I was just like, wow, I'm creative because I'm wearing my hair the way it comes out my head.
Our hair holds our history, it holds our pride, it holds our pain, it holds our pathologies, because our hair is where your first sort of inklings of ethnicity come from. I mean, look at me, I'm so light-skinned you can probably see through me. If my hair wasn't like this, most people would not identify me as black.
I remember one night I went out with my friend and this guy went and he rubbed his fingers through my head and goes, "Track check." Yo! And I
was like, I would be offended even if I went. I know you're not wearing trash.
So I've never found, I mean, there are very, very few white folks that want to have a conversation about race. It is uncomfortable for everybody. This is a nappy conversation. And if you can avoid it, you're going to avoid it. So I am not surprised that very few white women are like, yeah, I want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. It hurts. But we need to know, I need to know from my white sisters, like, really, what happens to you when I walk in the room and my hair is like this? It's okay if you think it's beautiful. Like, that's great. And why can't you say that? It's okay if you want to touch it because you just don't know. So with some honest, it's hard to be honestly ignorant. And ignorance just means you don't know. So what we're asking people to do is to bring their ignorance and bring their pain to a conversation. And that's why it's hard.
So the conversation that we ended up having during the You Can Touch My Hair exhibit was definitely not the conversation that we expected to have, but it was equally an important one. The conversation that we ended up having was a conversation, or is a conversation, that we as Black women have to have with ourselves at some point in our lives. Because our hair can mean so much and can symbolize so much, we have to decide how we feel about that. I, as a Black woman with this type of hair, or if I decide to straighten my hair with that type of hair, I have to decide how I feel about the way the world responds to me and my hair, and what it symbolizes. We have to figure out how we reconcile ourselves with the weight of our hair. Does it mean anything to us? Is it a burden? Is it something that we hold with pride, or can it just be hair?
It's not just hair. It becomes an extension of your cultural identity, your personal identity. So for some people, spiritual. You know, if you go to the Sadhus in India, or you go to the Jamaican, the Rasta communities in Jamaica, it's a spiritual extension. And for some people, it's an extension of their sexual politics. You know, for the woman who shaves all her hair off and says, you won't define me by my hair. It's never just hair. You're saying that everybody has, you never touch a Black woman's hair. Like, I think that's something that needs to go, because, like, that's just, it's taboo. You're making Black hair seem like, oh my gosh, you can't touch it because it's this and this. For some people, it is just hair. What is the big deal? But as Rada said, we all have different feelings about it. So, you know, there's someone who might not feel that way.
No, I don't think that at all. I think that for a white person to go and say that, I think that's actually really nice. Like, that would be cool, but I guess it depends on how they approach it. Like, yeah, and they came at me like that. I feel like, no, you cannot touch it. But they could admire it from afar, I guess. But it all depends. But other than that, if you were supposed to come up and be like, can I touch your hair? I'm like, sure, no problem.
I never really knew how I felt about the question, can I touch your hair? But after having a lot of the conversations that this exhibit ignited, and just talking to more and more people about it, I started to synthesize how I feel about it. A friend of mine encouraged me to look at the bigger picture. So if you think back, or if you just take a look back at the messages and the images that we've seen about Black hair, or Black women throughout history, the dominant image definitely has been one of straight hair versus natural kinky hair. We had a small moment during the Black Power movement when natural kinky hair was a symbol of our rebellion and also a symbol of pride. But things kind of went back to the way they were following that moment. So if you take a look at the bigger picture, the moments natural hair has had to shine has been very few and small compared to the moments that it's been considered as something wrong. So it's not surprising that natural hair, or this kind of hair, is still considered a novelty, even though Black people have been in America for hundreds of years. It's a novelty to people outside of our community as well as those inside our community as well. And that's not a cool fact to have to face, but it's one that we do have to acknowledge because it's true. And I guess with anything that is new or novel, people are going to respond to it in very silly ways. So we're still very much in that silly, awkward, early stage of this re-emergence of natural hair. But I think where we're heading is somewhere very exciting. So let's assume that the media is one of the main culprits of the suppression of natural hair. New media is now becoming the instigator of the resurrection of natural hair. There are bloggers and vloggers and sites dedicated to our hair that are showing us how beautiful it can be and how to take care of it. And by way of doing that, these bloggers and vloggers, they're helping us expand the definition of beauty, and they're also helping us take back our image. And there's something very exciting and powerful about that. They're instigating a change in a very subtle and grassroots type of way, but they're shaking things up. And with anytime you shake things up, anytime you change the familiar to something unfamiliar, there's always that awkward, uncomfortable, and sometimes hurtful stage of getting through that. But I think what's on the other side of that discomfort and this awkwardness that we're currently feeling is something beautiful.
Just one still shot of them all together and then we're done.
Yeah. One second. Where's my trigger?